I've said it before and I'll say it again. Nobody You Know is, right now, a pretty low-budget, homegrown production. And it means at this moment I'm actually short my tripod and I have to hold the camera up in the air myself. Now, if I were really clever, I could use that to transition to today's guest who spent a lot of time up in the air himself. I'm Brian Johnson, and this is Nobody You Know. Hello and welcome to Nobody You Know. I'm your host, Brian Johnson, and today I'm on the back porch, the lovely back porch with the beautiful pond and wonderful scenery of Mr. Doug Taylor, and he has also provided iced tea, so we're just going to get cozy here for a little while. A few weeks ago, Doug handed me his calling card, and the most interesting part of this may be just the wide variety here. We have retired wildlife biologist, former Marine fighter pilot, whitewater rafter, beekeeper, and tennis buff. How does all that fit into one lifetime?
I was busy.
Which of these would you say is the most interesting?
For me, it was the flying.
The flying?
Marine Corps, yes.
All right, well, let's talk about that. So,
Okay.
Marine fighter pilot. When did you join the Marines?
After I had my training, you make a choice at that point whether you want your commission in the Navy or in the Marine Corps.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of that happened in about 56.
Okay.
Started training in 55. Went to Pensacola as a NAVCAD. This is after I busted out of college at Oregon State after 2 years. And so I became draft bait. And so I looked around and decided that I would try to get into the Navy cadet program. And they took me. And I took all the training they took in a year's time and took my commission in the Marine Corps. Went to jet school and ended up in Miami, Florida, flying FJ-3s. Yeah, they flew the equivalent of what most people call a T-6 is the Air Force designation for it. We call it an SNJ. It's a two-place trainer, low wing, one prop, two seats. In tandem, and so I was in that almost a year.
So you started training on a prop plane?
Yes. So the first 20 flights that I took were all with a pilot in the back seat.
Mm-hmm.
And he taught me to do all the basics. In other words, make the turns and follow instructions and lots and lots and lots of landings. We did all kinds of landings on green pastures down there in Pensacola. They leased out the guy's farmland and then put a white cross on it, and then that attracted us to landing.
Yeah.
But so then we went through the various phases, acrobatics, where you learn to do the loops and the figure eights and all that kind of stuff, which all teaches you a discipline of where to put the airplane and how to fly. And then we ended up in gunnery and instrumentation. Flying instruments is difficult, but you had to do it because you're sometimes in the clouds and in bad weather.
Yeah.
But after a year, well, before that, after the 20 hops, we called them, I soloed, which scared my pilot to death, not me, but it scared him to death because I disappeared behind some trees. He said, "Get your fanny up out of those trees." So we did that, and then from that point, you would go out and learn to do something, and then you go practice it by yourself.
Okay.
And then a check pilot would take you out and fly with you to see that you'd learned it right, and then they teach you something else. So we learned.
So a very, very complicated form of homework. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. You had to do your homework, which was lovely because some of us learned to do things that they didn't approve of. One was flat hatting, which was absolutely forbidden. One of my my teachers, my pilot teachers, showed me how to do that. And you fly along at about treetop or just below treetop level, and things go by pretty fast, and that's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And you keep lots of speed, and you keep your prop up, and your rich mixture, so that you can recover and use your throttle handsomely. And we had some rivers down there, and you would get into the rivers, and you'd fly around these corners in the river to see if you could make them. And if there was a wire across the river, you popped over that. If you couldn't make a turn because it was too sharp, you popped over and went back down in the turn. But you had to constantly watch to make sure there were no other instructors watching, because they would get a number, and then you were hauled aboard.
So you got taught how to do this even as you were being told not to do it.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. But a good pilot usually pushes the envelope of the capability of his vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're not doing it, you can bet your enemy's going to be doing it.
Yeah.
And so that's what, they with one hand they tell you not to do it. In other words, don't get caught doing it. And the other hand says you need to practice some of it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Did you see any action?
No.
Okay.
My service was from 55 through 59, and we weren't fighting anybody at that time. So I enjoyed flying without getting shot at.
Well, that's a positive.
That is a positive, yeah. Didn't get to shoot at anybody, though, either.
But you were ready.
I was ready.
You were ready.
That's
Okay.
right. My name was on the dotted line.
Having just seen the new Top Gun movie that came out, I have to ask, how in your era, which obviously was not 2020s,
Yeah.
how much were you trained for, like, G-forces and stuff? How strong of
We
G-forces?
got all the G-force stuff because we had to make the tight turns as
Okay.
well. We just didn't. I never was able to go to a Top Gun program.
Right.
Because at the time that I got into the service, the war is measure and countermeasure. And they had decided, about the time that this FJ3 Fury came out, that they wouldn't be needing machine guns anymore. They would shoot everything down with rockets.
Okay.
So we were taught primarily with rockets, even though we did have we would go out in a formation and we would do high reverse turns on a big nylon screen as big as the side of my house here, and we would shoot a target that way.
Okay.
But so they didn't have a Top Gun school at the time that I was
Right.
training.
No, but even then, I was just wondering about just your training.
Oh yeah.
How, based on the speed of the planes back then, what kinds of G-forces and what kind of stuff were you dealing with compared to
My plane
now?
was
Ready to go?
well, it was a Mach 1 plane.
Okay.
So I was at the speed of sound in a dive, shallow dive. But
Yeah, see, I know just enough to be ignorant. So, but
that's 700 and some odd miles an hour. So
okay.
We didn't fly that fast very much because it burns a lot of fuel, first of all, and we had to have good conditions and that elevation and that downslope in order to get the plane to that speed.
Mm-hmm.
But 600 miles an hour, we chased each other at 600 miles an hour. Yeah. You took one coming this way at 600 and you're going that way at 600, and you can't see him, and there he went by.
Wow.
Just like a bang, he's gone by. So you know where he is now. And so you make start making a turn, and you're looking over your shoulder because you know he's coming back and you're coming back.
Yeah.
Because that's what you're going to do, is you're going to get into a contest to see who can get on whose tail.
I get nervous driving a car over about 80 because I just know if I move that wheel a little too much, the whole thing's going. What at 600 miles an hour? I don't know how to even phrase the question. What kind of stress level is there?
Well, there isn't much because you're up at an elevation where you can't see anything going by. You're just along for the ride.
Mm-hmm.
But you get down below 1,000, down to 1,000 feet. Let's say in the landing pattern and so forth, or in below 5,000.
Okay.
You've got a lot more
You start to see reference.
Well,
going.
not only see reference, but you're starting to feel bumps. You call them potholes, whatever we would in the air. We call them thermals.
Atmospheric changes. Yeah.
Changes in the atmosphere. Over the top of a field, you'll have hot air coming up. The next field over has got trees in it, and you dip down.
Huh.
And so it, 300 or 400, 500 miles an hour, the airplane would start hitting. You'd almost lose control.
Huh.
And so they had a rule that you weren't supposed to do more than 250 down at that level.
Okay.
And it burns a lot of fuel. The fuel line on those things is about that big around. But one of the other exciting parts was that during my stay in Miami, my squadron went aboard the Forrestal. So we got to do carrier landings. Now, everybody that becomes a naval pilot has to go through, even with our trainers, our low wing yellow perils, we call them. We would go out in the carrier, and we were soloing, and we would practice on fields before we ever went to a little carrier.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to do that before you became an officer pilot. And so we all had 5 landings on a carrier with props. But when we got to the jets, that's a whole different story, because the jets take a lot more room, they travel a lot faster, and you've got a whole different system for landing on a carrier.
Okay.
As a prop pilot, you can still see what they call the flag man sits on the back, and he tells you whether you're too high or too low, and right and left, and he can wave you off at a pretty close distance. But for a jet, you're way over. You're a mile away. In fact, when you're making your turn, so they use a mirror system, and that means that they've got a big, intense mirror, a light out on the front of the ship. It shines back into a parabolic mirror system.
Okay.
And that mirror system puts that light out as a glide path for you to follow and come in. And then there are green data lights on the side, and what you do is you fly the ball, if you will, the meatball. You fly it up and down, and if you fly it where that green light is, you're going to come right down and slide right onto the deck.
Okay.
So it's a huge help for us. And you got a nose wheel instead of a tail wheel. Tail wheel aircraft have got to slow down and end up stalling before they can stay on the ground.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Jets don't. They just crash right on the deck, and hook catches the wire, and then 120, 30 feet, you come to a screeching halt.
Yeah.
We'd get into a formation of four guys, and you flew over your target, and just like you see the Stuka bombers that the Germans used, that had the exposed wheels,
Okay.
and all the screaming, and they would come down in Poland and they would drop their bombs.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we didn't have exposed wheels, we didn't have the sirens and so forth, but you fly over your target until it disappeared in your wing route. It was so that you couldn't see it. Then you knew you were far enough along, and you inverted your aircraft, and you pull the nose down onto your target, and then you're picking up speed, and then you reverse again, and as you go down, you're watching your altimeter, and it's unwinding almost like a clock gone crazy, and you had to, by about 7,000, you had to pickle your bomb. You're kicking the rudders and doing whatever to keep your crosshairs on that rock, and that's a trainer right there.
Nope.
That's what they're training. So you would pickle your bomb, and then that's when the G-forces come in. You still got to avoid the ground.
Yeah.
And so
that's a positive.
as we would pull out, we would draw 5 or 6 Gs. We had the G suits and stuff on, and we would pull out, and then you made your way back and got back in the formation again, because there's another guy that had gone down and pickled, but they would call whether you hit or whether you were wide or whatever. They would call out what your strike was.
Mm-hmm.
And
so let me see if I pictured this right. Basically, you're going straight down
Yep.
over the target.
Yep.
So that way you know when you let go of the bomb, it's going straight down over the target. Is that the plan? Do I have that?
That's the plan, all right.
Okay.
But you got to remember that the wing is designed for lift. So whether you're going straight down, it still lifts. So it's moving you this way. That's why.
Okay. So I'm coming down.
Yep.
But I'm actually going like that.
Yes.
So let's get the view. We're going like that. Here's my target, and what I want to do is drop it right there.
Yes.
And then pull out.
That's right.
Okay.
You pickle it.
I'm ready.
And fighter pilots, I understand, don't wear G-suits. Because they
You mean the modern ones?
The modern guys don't wear G-suits. They just grunt. And they have to be in such great shape that they, by grunting and tensing their muscles, that they can keep the blood from running out of the head down and pooling into the lower extremities.
Okay. Well, then I have to ask before we go, what exactly is a G-suit?
A gravitational suit.
Right.
And the whole idea of either grunting or fighting gravity is on a pull-out mostly.
Yeah.
Is that the blood in your head weighs considerable. And
Yeah, when you're going like that, the forces are pulling it all
it's
down.
pulling it all down, and you'll black out.
Mm-hmm.
And it happens just this quick. And you're black.
What does the suit actually do for you?
Okay, the suit is hooked up to an air compressor system, and it senses how hard you're pulling, what kind of G-forces there are, and it puts air into this thing, and you've got this suit on. It's got a bladder across your stomach and your thighs and your calves. And what that thing does, it squeezes you.
Okay.
And it squeezes hard enough that there's no place for that blood to go except stay in your head, and that keeps you awake.
It detects the G-forces increasing.
Yes.
And it basically is a countermeasure.
That's right.
To all of that. Okay.
Yeah. If you're just flying around straight and level, your G-suit doesn't do anything for you. But only when you pull hard, no matter where you are, you're pulling, it counters.
And you say today they're just trained to do the breathing and the tensing and the...
Only the trained teams do that.
Okay.
The elite of the elite do that.
Okay.
All the rest of the pilots have G-suits.
Got it.
You wouldn't think of going into combat without a G-suit.
Well, okay, we'll go ahead and wrap up at this point. I'm sure we could talk more, but I try to keep the episodes down to a certain length. But
yeah.
But I definitely appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Nobody You Know. And if you did, make sure you click the like button. And if you enjoy the whole series, click the subscribe button and the little bell that lets you know every time I've uploaded an episode, which, when everything goes according to plan, is every Tuesday at 6 p.m. If you'd like to be on the program, you can write to me at 10thandfur@outlook.com and let me know. Of course, right now I have the budget to visit you if you're in Central Oregon. If you're outside of that, you'll have to wait till we get some commercial interests sponsoring my flight across the country to meet you. But anyway, thank you once again, Doug.
You're telling me that the bell goes off, so that means you're interviewing a bunch of ding-a-lings?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
No, everybody I've had on the show so far has been very enjoyable, a lot of fun, including you. So thank you once again, and yeah, I guess that's the end of it. I'll just say what I always do. I'm Brian Johnson. This is Nobody You Know, only now you do.